Hi, this is Mr. Ing, going over the quiz number 21, taken on April 17th, 2015. Apologize for the messy scan. So, anything highlighted in pink, LWQ means last week's quiz number 20, which means I just put the same question back on, and then you can just look at last week's video. For which discriminant is the graph possible? So, when you see the word discriminant, you should just think b squared minus 4ac. Now this has a negative, it's opening down, and because it crosses the x-axis at two places, that means it has two real solutions, which means that the discriminant should be greater than 0. So this is -9, that would be imaginary, which means this graph would, this choice would mean it doesn't cross the x-axis. This one means it only crosses the x-axis once, that's a double root, and this one is greater than 0, so your answer is C. Question number 2 is from last week's quiz. Question number 3 is also from last week's quiz. Question 4 was also on last week's quiz. Question 5, last week's quiz. Question 6, last week's quiz. And question number 7, last week's quiz. Question number 8, last week's quiz. This is probably one of the number one common mistakes. People think x squared plus 36 is a difference of squares. Remember, the keyword is difference means it's subtraction. If you did x squared plus 0x plus 36, you would recognize that. You can't find two numbers that multiply to be 36 but add to be 0. So the answer is prime. Same thing as last week. If you wrote, you got 3 points if you wrote the word can't factor, or not factorable. We write the word prime. Question number 9, last week's quiz. If you solved it, you factored it correctly and solved, meaning you set these equal to 0. That's the wrong directions. So I give you 3 points out of 4. Question number 10. Again, the reason why I put it back on this week's quiz is because many students were missing this. Anytime you have a negative there, you know that it's going to be a complex. You're going to have I. Square root of 24 is 4 and 6, so that 2 comes out. And from here, 4 and 2, I'm just going to take that out. My GCF there is 2, and my GCF of an 8, I'm going to take out a 2 as well, and I can cancel these 2's, and you're left with 2 plus I radical 6 over 4. Question number 11 from last week's quiz. Remember, if you factored it, but you didn't solve it, in this case I give you 3 points, because this one does tell us to solve. Question number 12, solve by completing the square. So that's telling you very explicitly. Your C value is already on the right side, which is great. Let's just say you got confused by that. You can put it on the left side. Now you have A, B, and C. Move over your C value. Your B value here is -6. You're going to take -6 and half of that. That's -3. -3 squared is 9. So I add 9 here. I can't just add 9 to a problem. It's completely changing the problem. So I have to also subtract 9. Because these two will add to be 0. Let's just say you added 9 here, and let's just say some of you are learning from YouTube or textbook. Most commonly, they also ask you to write it on the right-hand side. This would be plus 9 over there if you did that. Perfect trinomial square, you get x minus 3 squared plus 6 equals 0. Subtract 6. Take the square root. The square root of -6 is -1 times 6. Square root of -1 is I. And when you add 3 here, remember you're adding that 3 to the left of the plus or minus. X equals 3 plus or minus I rad 6. If you're solving this with a different method, because I explicitly told you completing the square, I gave you 1 point. That page is out of 20. Question number 13. It says solve by the quadratic formula, which means you have to take this over, so you have to add 6x. There it is. X squared plus 6x plus 18 equals 0. Your A, B, and C. A is 1, B is -6, C is 18. Always write down the quadratic formula. -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then you'll do your substitutions. Notice how I gave you 2 points just for your substitutions. Remember, this is read as 6 squared, so that's 36. -4 times 1 times 18 is -72. 36 minus 72 is a -36. -36, the square root of -36 is 6i. So now I have negative 6 plus or minus 6i over 2. And the numerator, the GCF of a 6 there is, I'm going to take out a 2. The reason I'm taking out a 2 is because the denominator is also 2, and those will cancel. You're just left with negative 3 plus or minus 3i. If you got up to here at least, or at least this part correct, then I give you 3 points. Number 14, last week's quiz. It's easiest by square root method. Subtract 3, take the square root. Remember, take square root, you have plus or minus, and then subtract negative 2. This past week, you guys learned to graph quadratic functions in intercept form. So make sure you label your intercepts and vertices. So I changed this to be a minus sign, x minus 2, that's the same, but I changed the plus sign to be a minus negative 4. Then I can identify that my a value is negative 1, your p value is just a positive 2, and your q is a negative 4. Your x-intercepts are 2, 0, and negative 4, 0. From there, I'm going to use the axis of symmetry. The equation we use is p plus q over 2. P value is 2 and q value is negative 4, so I get negative 2 over 2, which means negative 1. Your axis of symmetry is negative 1, which I didn't really graph here, and that essentially just means, so we can draw one. Let's see. No tools. I don't know what I'm doing. The axis of symmetry is a vertical line with your x value of negative 1. So that folds your parabola in half. So if you take this vertical line, x equals negative 1, substitute it back into the original equation here and here, you'll get this. Substitute it in, simplify, and you'll get 9. F of negative 1 equals 9. That means my vertex is negative 1, 9. I'm going to graph that. Quadrant 2. Also recognize that your a value here is negative, which means you know your graph's going to open down. To find your y-intercept, you make x equal to 0. Put 0 in there. That's negative 2 times 4, which is negative 8, and the opposite as positive 8. That makes sense because your graph is opening down, crosses the y-axis at 8, and then your intercepts are 2 and negative 4. Notice how the midpoint is between is your axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. So you got, I already showed you the scoring rubric in class. You get 8 points for this problem, 2 points for the x-intercept labeled correctly, 2 points for the y-intercept, 2 points for your graph, meaning you knew it opened down and it was parabola, and also 2 points for your vertex. That page was 16 points. Question number 16 from last week's quiz, graph, make sure you label intercepts and vertices. I give you a quadratic equation in vertex form. So again, you see the plus sign. I want a minus in the equation because that's what it gives me. So h is negative 3. So I change the x minus negative 3. Therefore, h is negative 3, and then k value is negative 5. A value, there is no sign there or a number. Therefore, I know that a is equal to 1, which should tell me that the graph opens up. So I have here my vertex of negative 3, negative 5. There it is. Find your x-intercept. You make y equal to 0. Add 5. Take the square root. Can't simplify square root of 5. That's plus or minus. Subtract 3. Negative 3 plus or minus radical 5. Remember, negative 3 plus 5. The plus sign goes on the right-hand side because those are bigger numbers to the right. Negative 3 minus radical 5 goes to the left. Your y-intercept here, you just make x equals 0. That comes 3. 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 5 is 4. And there's your graph. Let me go ahead and show you. Let me try to zoom out here. So you're supposed to use this graph here to do domain and range. Alright. So each box is worth 2 points. For your domain, that goes left to right. So the first thing you'll touch is this arrowhead, and the last thing you'll touch is the arrow, which you'll lose that you have all these numbers to the left and all these numbers to the right, so that's all real numbers. Anytime you have all real numbers, go ahead and write negative infinity to positive infinity with parentheses. That's for interval notation. For range there, this is from bottom to top. And bottom to top means you haven't touched anything down here with my arrow. And I won't touch anything till here. Well, this is the order pair, -3 on the x and -5 on the y. So essentially, you're not starting till -5. And then your graph keeps going up. The last thing you touch is the arrow. So it means all of these numbers above, all the numbers that are greater than -5. Y is greater than or equal to -5. For interval notation of the range, they'll start at -5. And then we just basically need a graph of all our solutions, and it goes towards positive infinity. So bracket -infinity because you're including a solution, to positive infinity parentheses. I hope this was helpful for you to do well on your quiz, on your test on Tuesday.